apparatus. When you woke up this morning, did you purposely say, I'm going to confine myself to a box? Or do you just avoid putting any conscious thought into today? When you're busy going at it, literally or figuratively, do you ever find yourself pausing for a moment to realize what's going on? Or are you just reacting? When you hear the saying, may I have your attention please, do you continue as you were, or do you consider the information you're about to receive might actually be valuable? When I was growing up, my mother used to ask me to do things, and sometimes her reasoning was, because I said so. Looking back, I wish perhaps I took the time to pause, think, and consider the ramifications of my choices. Good Friday to you. Today is Friday, October 21st, 2016. This is episode number 30 of Pause, Think, Consider. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. For those of you that have not followed us on Instagram, maybe you don't have an Instagram. Maybe you're like my mother and you didn't have Instagram until we created one on Pause, Think, Consider. Please go on, maybe like my mother, create an Instagram, and then follow us. Pause, Think, Consider. We try and make sure that on each and every channel, whether it's on our physical website, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, everything's different. We always have some sort of post regarding the episode of the day. But then we try and have unique content on each. So for those of you that haven't checked us out on Instagram, maybe you don't want to get an Instagram account, but you can still go on Instagram.com/pause.think.consider to check out our feed. Today's episode, very specific, very niche, but I want to talk about specifically motivational speeches as it relates to sports, and in particular, football, because of the time of year, and as it relates to a story that I would like to share. As I mentioned before on the program, I've essentially cut the cord completely. I don't watch TV. The number of football games that I have watched since the NFL kicked off and college football kicked off late August, early September is exactly 0. I have not watched a single game. I have seen live a few plays on TV, just happened to be in the room while a game was going on. Visited a friend and watched about half a game with somebody. That's the most I've watched. But I ran into, and I'll link to it on the blog or on the website, which for this episode would be pausethinkconsider.com/football. But I ran into this video that talked about the art of speeches after a football win, or something to that degree. The art of giving a motivational speech. And it related specifically to football coaches. It's several different examples in there. My personal favorite, the one that I liked the most, actually happened very recently, about 6 days ago to be exact. Head coach of Syracuse football, Dino Babers. He gave a speech after they beat, for the first time in so many years, a ranked team. And I'll link to his specific post-game speech. And it was one that gave me goosebumps. It had all of the intangibles. It had, and at the same time, it was very unique. I don't know enough about Dino, his past life. It felt very preachy. And the players at one point during the video are saying, preach, preach. But it was so incredibly inspiring. And as Dino described in this video that ESPN put together, he wasn't preaching. He wasn't giving a speech. He was just talking to his players. He was just talking to his players. There's another great speech. Jimbo Fisher, head coach of Florida State football, that he gives before they go out to play in the SEC championship game back in 2014. And then also, and I'll link to this one specifically on the website, but Showtime did some sort of, they followed Florida State. Gave an extremely impassioned post-game speech. I'm gathering from it that they won, but yet he was still upset by the fact they didn't do and didn't execute in the manner that they wanted them to. And then I look at, as my third example, a movie called Any Given Sunday. Looking back on it, the cast that was involved in Any Given Sunday, for a sports movie, arguably one of the greatest compiled cast of actors put together on any sports movie. Al Pacino, Jamie Foxx, Oliver Stone, Dennis Quaid, Cameron Diaz, LL Cool J, Lawrence Taylor was on it. And a load of former, current NFL players, which is common. Any sports movies are going to have a slew of professional, current, and former players of that particular sport. But Al Pacino gives this speech. And I know I'm a fairly emotional guy. Somebody that is moved quite often, as Jim Valvano talks about, moved to tears through the emotions. Some people call it a crybaby. I like to wear it as a badge of a male, a man that is not afraid to show his emotions. Now, there's times that we need to hold those back. Maybe not showcase them. But something about these speeches, all in particular, something about them that makes the hair on my arms, on the back of my neck, stand up. Let's get to the easy, the low-hanging fruit. First, their content. The content of their speech. It's very directed. It's very pointed. They know the direction. I'm always baffled. And of course, Al Pacino, he's an actor. So his speech that he gives has been rehearsed millions of times. In the case of Dino, in the case of Jimbo, those are raw off the cuff. Those aren't things that while they're doing their game plan, they're devising the speech that they're going to make, whether they win or lose based on the circumstances. No, that is straight off the cuff like Dino talked about. He's just talking to his players. But the content of it is so personalized, right in the moment. So that's the first part that makes it very impassioned. It's something that just happened. They just got off the field. They just won. They just lost. They're getting ready to go out. There's another great one, a movie called Friday Night Lights. I'll post this one on the website too. Friday Night Lights. I read this book when I was in high school. It's about Odessa football. Gives you a glimpse into what football is like in Texas. And their coach gives their halftime speech, and it's incredible. Of course, they have music that goes with it that helps bring out and draw out those emotions. But it first starts with the content. The next, and these are just basic, standard, again, we're going with low-hanging fruit here. You have to know what you're talking about. Yeah, you've got the content, but you have to know what you're talking about. And when you know what you're talking about, you don't have to think about it. It just comes off the cuff. I know for a lot of people, they don't understand how people are able to do a podcast, are able to give a speech, are able to motivate individuals and do so in a manner that's engaging and doesn't distract from them, the individual. You're not going to hear in a post-game speech a bunch of, gosh, did real good out there. Yeah, Jimmy, yeah, great job sealing the hole out there. No. Already, I probably, in terms of the listenership, I probably lost 90% of people right then and there. Because it's not engaging. Talked about earlier this week about silence. How to leverage that. Silence in speeches is like audible gold. It forces the individual to grasp onto each and every word that's enunciated. It draws them in. And then, based on that, then it's using inflection. It's pacing. It's projecting your voice and then taking it down. And making each and every word one that you're gripping to. You're waiting for the next word. It's just good storytelling. That's really what it comes down to, is it's storytelling. Every parent seems to be a great storyteller. Some better than others. Some have this innate ability to be a wonderful storyteller. And that's how I equate coaches, football coaches in all these videos, is that they're able to tell a story. able to motivate. They're able to inspire. And with that, they're able to get their players to do things that potentially they didn't think they could. They're able to achieve the results they're looking for. So when I hear great inspirational speeches, like from Friday Night Lights, from Any Given Sunday, from Jimbo Fisher, from Dino Babers, I try and look at how I can extract some of the nuances that they utilized and incorporate them when I talk, when I give presentations, when I perform this podcast. From an attention span standpoint, you have to be able to keep people's attention. If you can't do that, you've lost control. That's what some of the greatest speakers are able to do. In the case of the football team, those players have to be there. You can't finish the game and just go off. No, you have to be there. You have to listen to coach. But yet, they don't necessarily have to be an engaged group. That's where the magic happens. That's where the magic of a great presenter, a great speaker. I know I'm highly critical of individuals that give presentations. Highly critical. Whether it's of myself, coworkers, paid motivational speakers, presenters, our governmental employees, our president, local politicians. I hold everybody to the same standard. It's part of the reason why I enjoy conferences and part of the reason why I can't stand them. I get jazzed up to go to conferences because I feel like I can learn something and I can also be inspired. But that point of turning off my attention or keeping it is very quick. More than likely, we're talking minutes. And it doesn't necessarily have to have all sorts of bells and whistles and videos and images. The timing just has to be right. Somebody that opens their presentation with an 8-minute long video, the likelihood of keeping my attention, very low. There has to be some sort of a hook. And then once you get that hook, it's bringing me along. And depending on how long that speech is, depends on the pace in which you bring me along. If we're talking about a 5-minute speech, it's going to be pretty rapid, pretty quick. It's going to hook in and build and finish. And then conclude. We're talking about a 30-minute long presentation. That's what makes TED Talks so great. And there's great TED Talks, and there's TED Talks that make you scratch your head. They're great at their expertise. They're not great at the format. They're not great at the format. But the format is the same as these football coach speeches. The format can help bring out some incredible moments. That's why so many people love TED Talks. They're action-packed, high-flying, lots of information, ongoing learning and education, and very engaging based on the format. Same with these speeches of these football coaches. Very entertaining, very high energy, very to the point. It's not this long, drawn out, 3-hour documentary type movie. So how can we harness, how can we capture some of the essences of these speeches? How can we apply them to our own speech, to our own presentations? How we carry and we conduct ourselves on a day in, day out basis. The first one, and it's something that I struggle with immensely myself, brevity. Brevity can go to so many different degrees. It's why I don't read a lot of business marketing-based nonfiction books. I always try, but it feels like in an 8-chapter book, chapter 1, 2, and 8 could all be taken out. There's the introduction, the whole basis of why they're writing the book. Then after they get that out of the way, here's the chapter that's all about, here's all the things that I'm going to get ready to tell you about the book. And then number 8 is here's the conclusion. Number 8's probably a necessity. I suppose 1 and 2 are. But man alive, get to the point. That's something, as I'm sure all of you have noticed, something I've struggled with on this program. Finding that balance, leaving it very open and organic, relatively unscripted in regards to the subject matter and what I'm going to talk about. But too often are there points that are made over and over and over and over and over. I understand emphasizing. But you hooked me, now get to the point. And that's very much how society is. Again, we've talked about attention span before. We have. And we all struggle with it. I personally, as I've said before, I'm an optimizer. I try and get all the information and then improve the efficiencies so I can do more things. Trying to listen to a 30 to 60 minute long podcast, it's a challenge. It's a commitment. But if you're able to get to the specific points in a condensed period, or if it is longer, if it is 30 to 60 minutes long, and having it relevant, takeaways, give me a reason to continue to listen. But too often, we wind up repeating ourselves. Too often, we draw things out. We don't have our thoughts together. And as a result, everyone suffers. So point number 1, brevity. Number 2, We've talked about passion before. But it's leveraging specific speech tactics. Already alluded to these, already talked about them. But inflection in your voice, pacing, utilizing space, silence, having an introduction that catches somebody, having points and takeaways that you can leverage, and then summarizing everything. Basic, fundamental speech points. And third, and finally, is to just bring it. The thing I love about all of the speeches, and I hope you feel the same way when you watch them. The thing I love about all of them is it feels like they want to run through a wall. And after watching it, I want to run through a wall with them. You can call that passion, but they are bringing something from within them and exposing all of us to it. It's infectious. It's something you can tangibly taste and hold. And it's what makes every single one of those speeches great. So in recap, we've talked about the topic specifically of football motivational speeches. Giving the examples of Dino Barber from Syracuse, which happened 6 days ago. Any Given Sunday, Al Pacino, Jimbo Fisher from Florida State, and from Friday Night Lights. What makes all of those speeches great? They each have their own nuances to them. But what we can take away from them is utilizing brevity, utilizing basic speech tools and techniques, pacing, inflection, volume, intro, outro, takeaways, and then just bring it. I want to thank you all for tuning in today. Please visit the website at pausethinkconsider.com/football. And don't forget, go check us out on Instagram. You can search for us, Pause, Think, Consider. And I look forward to talking to you all again next week on Pause, Think, Consider.